Hey, folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen X, and right over there is John, your resident millennial. John, how aren't you or are you doing this evening?
Actually doing fantastic. You know why?
Nope.
Because I got myself a Wi-Fi extender thing, booster thing. So yeah, hopefully that's gonna help out my lagging issue that I've been having for the past months.
It's funny, your voice lagged a little in that. You had a little
I
reverb lag while
paused.
you were saying it.
Yeah, maybe. At least it's not like lagging for seconds and seconds though.
Hey, that's always good. It's good to see you catching up, uh, you know, with the future. Coming into the present day, getting some.
Yeah. I can see it happening slightly, but only for like a couple of seconds. It's
Well,
not like full on.
I'm hoping that's not going to be an issue for me here before too long when we move.
Oh yeah, then you're gonna be the one I'm gonna be able to
I'm nervous.
talk
I'm a little
shit.
nervous because a lot of places in the area we're moving, they get their stuff through satellite only.
Hmm.
Yeah,
It's not too trustworthy.
it's, you know, the big boys haven't come in. But I mean, the upside is this many billions of dollars that Biden is putting forth in his for his
You
infrastructure
mean
plan.
trillions?
Yeah. Okay.
Five, in fact,
Trillions.
trillions.
Um,
You know how much the Afghanistan war has cost us so far? I think it was like two.
but this is infrastructure, John,
Right. Apparently,
which is
I guess
why
it does cost way more to build infrastructure than it does to destroy it. So that's fair. Yeah.
which is why it's very important for you to pay a mileage tax.
Oh my God! Don't even get me started.
Don't get me started, right?
Get me started on that.
But no, part of his infrastructure plan is to cut costs of internet service for people, get service to unserved areas, create like he's talking about sending like paying half the internet bill for a lot of people.
Mm.
That's as part of this. Get everybody internet. But of course, we've got Elon Musk working on that as well, trying to
Isn't he
get.
working on like free internet for everyone, like
No, no,
just
no,
out of
no.
the
This
kindness
is
of his heart?
this is not
I
going
don't
to
know.
be free. It's going to be like $99 a month. It's going to be like any other internet service provider in the beginning. But yeah, I mean, he's planning to have the bulk of the satellites up this year,
Yeah,
supposedly. But
good for him.
he's sending rocket after rocket up or attempting to.
Yeah.
But they're not playing around with what they're doing. I mean, he's saying he's pretty serious about all this space stuff, man. He's on track. He said he
He's a
plans
big
to
fan.
have the first colony on Mars. That's his thing. He's going to have the first people setting foot on Mars,
That's insane.
colonizing, so that we have a planet to go to. That does it not bother you a little bit though? It's like Jesus Christ, the only options we have to replace this planet are second best at best. you know.
Well, for now, to start with, and then we learn how to terraform Mars, and then then it becomes another Earth, and we ruin that, and then we can, then we can re-terraform Earth, right? Because then by then it'll have time to kind of cool off and chill, and then we can re-terraform that, and come back to Earth, and then just repeat that cycle over and over again.
Well,
We'll be
yeah,
fine.
Well, now there is talk that there's supposed to be a telescope that's being worked on right now. That apparently this thing has been pushed back for the last few years. Like it still hasn't been completed, but it's supposed to be completed. The current date of completion is this October. But this satellite, this telescope that they're going to put up is, puts the Hubble to shame, as it were. And basically, this telescope will be able to be pointed at these exoplanets out there that we think might be habitable or might have civilization on them, and it will actually be able to see the planet well enough and determine if there actually is life and or civilizations on specific planets. It's supposed to be that good, but they can't get the goddamn thing finished and get it into space, so it really doesn't mean a whole lot, does it?
Right. I mean, it's kind of cool or whatever. But,
But
it is what
but
it is.
closer to home, you know,
And speaking of closer to home, we have a couple of things to bring up, some housekeeping stuff.
not
Not.
housekeeping. I don't want to. Not housekeeping.
Yeah, they're knocking on your door. I know you're still in bed, Robert, but they're knocking on the door. They want to come in. They
Who's
want to
they?
give you new towels. Housekeeping.
Oh,
Trying to give you new towels,
You want me
Robert.
fluff your pillow?
Housekeeping?
Housekeeping. You want
Housekeeping.
me jerk you up? What
Whoa,
kind of hotel is this?
that kind of hotel. No, we got a couple of things. First off is Saturday from 1 a.m. to 1 a.m. in the most important time zone. That's our time zone, the Eastern time zone. Jay Edgar is going to be doing his 24-hour live stream for charity. He's going to be doing it for um, suicide prevention, which is an awesome cause that, despite the fact that it took me a second to remember, is one that's very near and dear to my heart. Um, no, I was just trying to think of what I was going to say next, and
Right.
that was
Sell it, John. Sell
yeah, I
it.
know, right? A bunch of people are going to be there. Some of them are cool. Some of them I don't know, but I'm sure they're cool too. Um, but most importantly, yours truly will be there at about 2:30 in the afternoon. That's of course 2:30 Eastern time, the only important time zone, as I said. So make sure you hang out with us there, and then I'll be on from midnight to 1 as well. What about you, Robert?
I've touched base with him. He asked me about 10 o'clock on Saturday night. So I think around 10 p.m. I expect to be available before then. So you never know. But I told him 10 o'clock would definitely be doable for me. I shouldn't be too worn out from the just a 2-day trip. But my wife did buy the big bag of peanut M&Ms, so
Oh snap! Yeah,
I
you
could
might
be in a
fucked.
sugar coma by the time I get
You
back.
could be. Speaking of your 2-day trip, though, the other piece of housekeeping we have, Friday, you will not be available for the show. Is that correct?
I will not be here for the show on Friday.
And in that regard, the great John, the millennial to end all millennials, I've come up with the greatest solution known to mankind, and that will be that myself and Midget B will be doing a gaming and drinking stream. So we're gonna get drunk and play video games with you guys. So make sure you're there for that. That'll be at 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, as opposed to 8:30 as a normal show. So 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, we'll be doing a drunk gaming stream. So make sure you're there for that. It'll be a lot of fun. We'll hang out with you guys. Um, we're playing a game. Not sure which one yet, but we'll figure it out.
The big gay millennial game is what
That's
they'll be
right.
playing. I see Ron Helton lurking around over there.
Yes.
Lurking in the quiet zone.
Quite.
Good to see you
Over on-
tonight, Mr.
on
Helton.
Chabot.
You might be the only person out there with us this evening.
I see. It looks like it so far.
Hey,
I
John,
like to be fashionably late.
how, I meant to ask you, how's the Western motif going?
Mm. I actually just recently watched my very first spaghetti western.
With Clint Eastwood?
No,
Mm.
it's actually a legit spaghetti western,
Like
as in like straight
Italians?
from Italy,
Mm.
as in Italians speaking pretty bad English,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
somewhat. It was weird. Like some of it looked like it was dubbed over, and some of it wasn't. It was really weird. But it was from like sometime in the '70s. It's called My Name Is Nobody. Is what it was called. Have you seen that one?
I want to say I saw it a long, long time as a kid, because
Probably.
my grandmother used to watch those spaghetti. But the name sounds familiar.
Yeah, My Name Is Nobody is what it was called. And it's about this dude. His name is Nobody, and he was like the fastest. Obviously like every other Western, right? He's the fastest. Hands in the West, except for the guy that he is his hero, and so he ends up like hunting him down, and he tries to. He like wants to kill him, but he's like friends at the same time. Like it gets weird, but yeah, it's just kind of goofy and silly. I liked it.
If I'm not mistaken, you should pull up a list of the spaghetti westerns that Clint Eastwood did back in the day, because a part of me is wanting to say that he did an American spaghetti western version of that same movie, and I
Oh yeah.
can't remember what the name of it was, but it was something similar to that. I want to say. Um, you know,
Let's see. I'll
because
pull it
of
up right now.
course, anytime something's done, we have to make it our own here in America. We must make it
Spaghetti.
ours.
That was not spaghetti. Spaghetti westerns.
Oh, Helton says he's seen it. Yeah, that's not surprising.
Um, Spaghetti Western database.
Did you put in Clint
He
Eastwood?
actually might. He might. Yeah, he might have actually been in this movie. I might not have recognized him because I'm fucking dumb. So,
Do you realize how young that man was in some of the when he got started out? Like it, yeah. But I don't know. He's pretty distinctive. I don't know if it'd be that easy to overlook him unless he was super
I don't
young.
think you know. I don't think you know how easily I don't recognize people.
Hmm.
Um, okay, let's just look it up by name.
Well, yeah. Well.
Or you know what? We just look up the movie. My name is Nobody, 1973. So it's around the same time. It's around the
Helton, I don't think he was. I agree. I don't think he was in that one, but I
probably
want to
not.
say that one of his spaghetti westerns, because his spaghetti westerns, he did they did make.
No, it was
Um,
Terrence Hill and Henry Fonda and
right.
Gene Martin.
So Henry Fonda was in that.
Yeah, Jack Beauregard, the old guy that he was like that was his hero.
Because Henry Fonda's not Italian. Yeah.
I'm telling you, this movie was bad. It might not have been no, it might have been like entirely Italian, but it was obviously. Hang on, who's the director? Tonino Valeri, totally a fucking Valeri, totally a fucking Italian dude.
Now I have to say, I think it's going to be It would be
Yeah,
difficult.
Italy.
I think it's going to be difficult for you to look at too many movies from way back then, even '73 or even further back, like when you go back to some of the old school westerns from back in the day, um, to really like consider them good, right?
I liked this one though. I liked it a lot. It was very like they obviously did a lot of wordplay with the nobody.
Right.
Like at the end when Jack Beauregard had died, right? Like he faked his death. Spoilers, 1973. Sorry, but he faked his death, and so like on his like little memorial, it said nobody was faster. It's like nobody, the guy named Nobody
Right.
had shot him. He said nobody was faster. That was the whole kind of overarch of the movie was that nobody was faster than Jack Beauregard. Like that was the whole thing.
I
Several times it was said throughout the movie, and then of
I did
course nobody ended up being faster.
I did not know Terrence Hill was still alive. That's interesting. That's a
Yep.
that's a long, healthy life going on there. Um, but yeah, so a lot of the ones that Clint Eastwood did were kind of they were kind of knockoffs of some of the original Italian spaghetti westerns. Just done in an American for an American audience. Um, especially it wasn't the good. All right, help me think. Maybe Ron can help me think. It wasn't the good, the bad, and the ugly. It was the
Wait, which one?
with. I was just I was trying to remember one specifically that I knew was kind of a takeoff of another Italian an actual Italian spaghetti western,
Mm.
but it was. It wasn't the good, the bad, and the ugly. It was a different one. A Fistful of Dollars. That's the one I believe.
Mm-hmm.
For a few dollars more, where Clint was a bounty hunter. Yeah, see, he did a fistful of dollars, and then there was For a Few Dollars More. And if I'm not mistaken, those that was like a sequel, like that was a series, as it were. Those were followed. He played the same character in those. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct, Ron Helton? God, it's been forever since I watched those, but I want to say A Fistful of Dollars and For a Few Dollars More were actually kind of loosely based off previous Italian spaghetti westerns.
Okay.
I could be wrong there. It may be a different western by him, but because he had quite a handful of them back then.
Nice. Yeah, that is pretty sweet.
Yeah. So
There's
that
Elephant Man showing up too. What's up,
Elephant
man?
Man, good to see you in the house.
You're lurking.
How you doing tonight? But yeah, so yeah, Lee Van Cleef. That's a good name for some Western stuff. He was good. But several about him being a bounty hunter. So yes, yeah, he agreed. That's what you got to go with. You got to watch some of those. When he was bounty hunter, he's and didn't he do outlaw? Did he do Outlaw Josie Wales? Wasn't that Clint as well? I believe you should look that up. The Outlaw Josie Wales.
Maybe. I've got a long enough list as it is, man.
No, you don't. You don't have a good enough list. That's the thing.
I might not have it good enough, but it is long enough
Right.
for sure.
There's the important thing to take away from this
Yeah,
is
same with
whether
my
the
dick,
list
right?
is.
Long enough, just not good enough.
I have no point of reference for that. But speaking of
Disagree with me.
speaking of not good enough, have you heard about this chick up in Minneapolis?
Nice. Good transition.
Yes, Clint did Josie Wales. Yes, that was Clint. The Outlaw Josie Wales. You should check it out. Oh, Hang 'em High. Oh, Hang 'em High.
I think that one's on the list for sure.
You got to see Hang 'em High. God, there's
Yeah.
nothing better than Clint Eastwood roaming around with a fucking rope burn on his neck. Just being a badass. Just being
That's
a
cool.
badass. But anyway, this chick, have you heard about this chick up in Minneapolis? It's been
I think
going
I heard
on
a thing
for
or two.
quite a few days now. What's her name? Kathy Porter? Is that her name? Kathy Porter? I believe that's the name. Kim Porter. Potter. Kim Potter. God, I got the name
Wow.
all screwy. Hey, I had the initials correct. Kim Potter, 25 plus years on the force. Pulls
Yeah,
over.
it's hearing like anywhere between 23 and 26 is what
Yeah.
I've heard. So yeah,
I just went with 25 because that seems like a good number. Like,
Yeah.
rounding one way or
good
the other.
round number.
But pulls over, is part of a traffic stop for out of registration tag. Pulls Duante Wright over. Find out he's got a warrant for attempted aggravated robbery after choking a woman at gunpoint, which the first ones had been out that it was a failure to appear, right? Whatever. But anyway, found out he had a warrant, asked him to step out of he was out of the vehicle, and then they were going to cuff him, turn around to cuff him. He jumps back in the vehicle. She starts hollering, taser, I'm going to tase you, I'm going to tase you, taser, and fires her taser, but the taser just happens to be her pistol, not the taser. Hits him, drives the car, wobbles out for a couple of blocks, crashes into a tree, guy dies.
Yep.
All right, so I gotta put this one to you now. Oh, and just FYI, so the head of the police department there comes out and says the body cam footage shows that it looks like she made a mistake in grabbing the wrong weapon. Blah blah blah. But since then, he stepped down. Gannon has stepped down. The chief of police or resigned.
His last name is Gannon. That's funny.
Gammon. I think.
Gammon? That's even funnier, actually.
Yeah, I think his last name is Gannon. 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 Tim
Okay.
Gannon. He resigned after the shooting,
Like Zelda.
and then Kim Potter resigned, but she's been arrested and is being charged with second-degree manslaughter.
Yeah, so my takeaway from all of this is one, no one is in the right in this at all. He's not in the right, she's not in the right, no one's in the right. Um, reason being, like, yeah, he jumped back in the car. Fleeing, I don't think should be an executable offense. However, he jumped into a car, which is at least legally considered a deadly weapon. So, I mean, he could easily have run those officers over. I get why what happened happened. Also, she wasn't. I do believe that she wasn't going for her gun. That she intended to tase him,
Okay.
and as I do believe that.
Okay. I can understand that to a
But
certain extent.
obviously, no. I mean, I don't think that it was intentional that she wanted to kill him.
I'm not saying it
And
was intentional.
I think that, yeah, she should be fired and never be able to be a police officer ever again, and brought up on whatever kind of applicable charges that would apply to that. Um, yeah,
So here's the thing. Here's where the real question comes in, and where everything's gonna is gonna hinge. Uh, 20 plus years on the force, somewhere around
hmm
25 years on the force, and this is a
yeah,
training officer,
for sure, yeah,
right? She trains other cops. I mean, that's part of
sure,
her job at her level,
hmm
and is explicit part of her job. Um, and she makes that level of mistake. I mean, now,
yeah,
I mean, this is one of those. So this is one of those questions where it becomes okay. Is that is that kind of mistake? I mean, it. I don't I don't want to say acceptable, but I mean that is not something that you can make a mistake on.
right,
I mean
yeah. You
that's
can fuck up the paperwork or something. Don't shoot somebody when you intend to tase them.
I mean
That's a different kind of. That's a different, way different kind of mistake. No,
because
like I said, she should be fired. She should never be a police officer again, and brought up on whatever applicable charges.
she's going to be facing prison now.
Right.
Now I don't. She has to go to prison. That's my thinking though. Like there's
Yeah.
no way for her to not go to prison for
Well,
that.
there's no real defense for her, at least with like the Derek Chauvin and George Floyd thing. Like there's doubt there. With her, there's no doubt. Right. The only thing that could possibly be in doubt is intent, and I just don't see how you can make an argument that she intended to shoot him.
Right, and that's why second degree manslaughter is being used because there's no intent there, but it was negligence, like gross negligence, to pull the wrong weapon like that. Um,
You know.
so the second degree manslaughter is a viable thing. People are pissed that they're not going for more, and of course it is
Well,
going to be that experience on the force for so many years that will make them say, how do we know this wasn't intentional? Like she didn't fake the mistake, right? This is going to be the narrative argument from any kind of prosecution on this.
because for what? Like what? Because he's black? Like
Sure,
really?
sure,
Why?
because
That's
that
why. 'So she's never. So in her 26 years on the force, she has never encountered a black person until now.
that's she has had a situation before,
Like
right? And I forget
had
what it
a
was.
situation before.
She had a situation where her decisions where she had a questionable decision that did involve uh, uh, race coming into the question. But it was like a overuse of force was more what it was about. But they'll find anything that they can to spin the narrative, right? That's the thing.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course.
So that is really the biggest question is like she probably knew as she was resigning, I'm going to have to go to jail for this. I can't not be scapegoated on this. She can't walk away from
Right.
this just losing her job and saying, "Oops, I had an accident," and killed a guy, there's
Yeah.
the demand for blood is going to be too high. It doesn't matter that this kid had aggravated,
Mm,
warrants, bullshit, that he has a violent history, whatever the case may be.
right.
None of that matters.
Well, I agree. I don't think any of that matters. That doesn't mean that he should just be shot on sight, right? And not that she did that. Obviously, she wasn't. I still believe her that that it was unintentional. Um, but yeah, it doesn't matter what kind of warrants he has. Doesn't mean you just you kill somebody.
They already strung
But
out.
and it wasn't even for the warrants. It was the fact that he got into his car and was fleeing. That was
Right.
and again, she wasn't trying to shoot him. She was trying to tase him, which I'm not sure how well that would have worked. But that's not my decision.
Well, and
Right?
there's a question for you. Was she going to be able to tase him through the car? Was she? I would have to see the body cam footage.
Well,
But
presumably the door was still open.
okay. Um, but that's a uh, the it's going to be I can't get past the very idea that her time on the force, her level of experience, all of this is going to sway
Yeah.
it. Is going to sway this narrative to where it's going to be a harsher penalty for her than just
Well, see,
making a boo boo.
I think there's sort of. I saw a number. I'm not sure how true it is, but something like this happened like 16 times last year.
Well, that's
Right.
there is
I think so. I think that happens, and that's throughout the whole country, right? So
right.
that's negligible. That's almost nothing, right? Not that it doesn't matter. Yes, everyone's lives matter. Blah blah blah. But the thing is, like things like that do happen. It's just that this one happens to be a high profile case because somebody got a hold of the body cam, right? And it's a white cop on a black, person.
Well, and it's 10 miles away from the courthouse where they're having the Chauvin trial.
Oh right, yeah. Which is of course not relevant whatsoever.
Oh, it's absolutely one of the most relevant things in the whole narrative. Come on,
That's so stupid.
it doesn't make it any less factual, right? It doesn't make it any less the crux of the narrative. Um,
Right.
and when it's all said and done, you know, um, that's what needs to be talked about. Those are the things that are important to talk about, because if we talk about those things, if as opposed to, well, why are they carrying a firearm and a taser, one on either side, and being put in a position yet again to make a split second decision and act upon that, right? You've got to act on every scenario now and think, does this require lethal or non-lethal force?
Right.
And then act, right? Because, of course, it's never about, oh, somebody had to make a split second decision. Because that's the part that's often overlooked in all of these situations. Cops got to make a fucking decision right now. They have a quarter of a second to make a decision on what they need to do, and you expect them to act. And then you're going to tell them, oh, well, your deadly weapon is on this side, and your not so deadly weapon is on this side, and you need to keep track of that. Then you need
not
to,
only that, but your deadly weapon is on your dominant hand side. At least for most people,
right,
the right
and
side
that
the
is where
dominant
they
side.
keep it. That's where they do how they do it up there, which is again, oh, well, there's a dumb thing, right? You shouldn't have the deadly weapon on the dominant side, because what's going to be the natural,
Right.
obviously maybe that's exactly what happened with her. She's just like boom.
She's thinking taser, taser, taser while doing the motion that she's made 1,000, 10,000 times. With her gun here.
Right.
Thinking it's her just saying taser, taser, taser while bringing out the gun. Yeah, I mean,
I'm not going to lie to
it can
you.
happen.
Do you know how many times I've been looking in the refrigerator and having the thought, I came in the house to go to the bathroom,
Yeah. That muscle memory.
right? And I'm like, because I'm thinking different, I'm thinking whatever as I'm walking into the house to go to the bathroom, and then it just, boom, right?
Hmm.
It's yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of pressure on these cops, and in these little things. That's the thing. The problem is you don't really understand how these little things, these little adjustments that you force them to make. Oh well, now you got to carry lethal and non-lethal and make those decisions. Add that in because the things
Yeah.
that you have to really think about and make decisions on, to me, seems like, oh, I need like, dude, don't run yet. I need like 5-10 seconds to
Yeah.
determine how this situation needs to pan out before you run and I respond.
Yeah, you gotta pause the game real quick and,
Right.
kind of look up the best way to finish this part. Yeah.
Uh, Elfman in chat, Elfman says Ken Potter is another example of why we need private security instead of government monopoly of force. Yeah, but the problem is it that private security will come in the form of big corporations. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of private security either, unless they're like, one or two guys that you've hired to walk behind you 10 step, walk 10 steps
right.
behind you. Like those guys, sure, do that, but not as like a police force. I don't. It's just not a good idea.
He says if her
But he's right about the government having the monopoly of violence, and they absolutely should not. They don't deserve it. They're not responsible with it. They should absolutely not have it.
well, uh, I don't know. That's see, there's such a sticky conversation there, right? I mean, who do you you know who do you have enforce law? Because
Well,
people
why do
can't
we
be
need?
left people can't be left to their own devices to enforce law within themselves,
What's funny?
right?
One of my favorite quotes from Master and Commander is at one point they're having an argument about how the ship is being run, and one of them's the doctor. Oh no, it was hang on. No, it was Jack Aubrey who was like, men must be governed, albeit not always wisely, but they must be governed. To which the doctor responds, "That's the excuse of every tyrant from Nero to Bonaparte, and that's 100% true. That is the excuse of every single tyrant: is that man must be governed, that he cannot govern himself, and that is 100% not true.
Okay.
Man can govern himself. The problem is when you try and control what other people do, you end up causing a lot more damage than you do if you just react to what someone's doing as opposed to trying to actively stop them."
Okay. But see, the error there is this idea because the conversation stops at, well, it's not true. Man can govern himself. Yes,
Yeah,
he
you
can.
can.
But the problem there is is about choice because so many people choose not to govern themselves. Right?
Okay, but what happens?
We live in a world where you have every opportunity to govern yourself and never deal with the police.
That's not
As
true. You don't
what?
have the right to go. You can't govern yourself.
I said have the
Where?
opportunity to govern
When?
your own actions. You govern your own
Somewhat.
actions. When you get
Somewhat.
drunk
Yeah.
and get behind the wheel of your car, that's you
Yeah, yeah.
not governing yourself.
Right, right,
And the question becomes, if that's the scenario, who helps take care of that situation? Who gets that guy off the roads before he kills somebody?
People around him. I mean, it would be the same thing as the cops. Like, if someone tries to stop you from driving, either you're going to drive anyway and drive quickly, just like you would if you're running from the cops, or you're going to listen to them and stop. In which case, or like with the cops, you're going to pull over when they try to pull you over. It's the same thing. The only thing is the threat of violence isn't there. Like, that's the
Okay,
thing.
I don't understand.
The threat of
So
execution
guy
isn't there.
gets drunk at a bar, gets in his car, starts driving down the road. He's weaving and driving. Who gets him off the road? Who's responsible? Who needs
No
to
one's
get him?
responsible for doing it.
Somebody needs to get him off the road
Yeah, probably.
before he kills somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's not okay to drive drunk. So how does that get policed? How do we in a non police this you talk about this monopoly on force? I understand that they're enforcers. Police are enforcers of the law,
Right.
but if you take away that monopoly of force, right?
No,
you don't have the cops. Who's responsible for protecting people from that
whoever's
drunk
nearby.
driver? So
Whoever's
what?
nearby.
Who? What? You're gonna pull the guy over?
I'm gonna try and get his attention. Hey, what are you fucking doing, asshole?
Guess what? When a cop pulls him over in a cop car, they typically a lot of times pull over. If you're trying to do it in your car, he's not going to give a fuck.
You don't know that.
You're no authority.
Your spec. It doesn't matter. You're
Authority
speculating.
makes the difference between what a person does. If he doesn't know you from Dick and Jack Dick, he's not going to pull over. But he'll pull over for some red and blues.
Wait. So the threat of violence is legitimate because people are afraid of violence. Is that what you're saying? Like,
hold on. So there's the thing. You say the threat of violence. If I get pulled over by a cop, do you know it's not the threat of violence that worries me? It should be. It's going to jail that's more the issue for me.
That's the threat of violence.
Incarceration and violence are not the same thing. Don't go snowflake.
Is.
Don't snowflake.
Hang on. Let's walk through this. Okay? The cop is behind you when you're swerving, you're weaving in and out. Cop goes up behind you, flashes the lights. What do? You
pull over.
Why? Why would you bother?
Because you realize you've broken the law.
So out of the kindness of your own heart. Okay, so out of the kindness of your own heart.
I mean, if a cop's pulling me over, I'm pulling over because I expect I might have done something or probably did something that was wrong, right? I infracted on a law. It's not because I'm worried that he's going to the violence. I'm not worried. No. I don't understand this threat of violence.
Okay, so what happens if you don't pull over? When the cop comes behind you, flashes his lights, whoop whoop, and even goes to the little, thing.
Okay, they're gonna chase me down and arrest me.
Okay, they're gonna chase you down. How do they stop you?
It depends. I don't know. Let's. We would probably need to be in the scenario so I could decide if they're going to do it with a nail strip or ram the side of my car or shoot my wheels out. I don't know how they're going to stop me, John.
Which is what? There's a word for that. Which is what?
Violence.
There's a word for that. It's violence.
Nail strip is not violence.
The violence is
that's
there.
a deterrent.
Destruction of your property.
A nail strip is
destruction of your property.
No.
And then guess what they're going to do? They're going to rip your ass out of that car.
Look.
And they're going to beat the shit out of you.
Look, the idea that everybody is sitting around afraid of violence every time they see a cop is bullshit.
No, the threat of violence is always there. Is my point.
I have.
The threat of violence is always there.
The only time I felt the threat of violence is when I was breaking the law, and had to be arrested.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the threat of violence is always there. Anytime there's an interaction with the police officer, there is a threat of violence. Any order that he gives you is backed up by the threat of violence. You will do what I say, or I will inflict violence on you. That is how policing works. That is how you enforce a law. It's the only way to enforce a law. Really, is through violence. Are you kidding me?
That is really such a bullshit breakdown of it.
How?
John, how? if a cop tells me that I need to step back from an area, it's not. I'm not stepping back because I'm afraid he's going to be violent towards me, or that he's got the opportunity to be violent. That he can choose violence.
We've had this conversation a bunch of times.
But
same thing with like the paying your taxes. We've had the same exact conversation. What happens if you don't pay your taxes, right? You get audited, you don't go there, they issue a court date, you don't go there, they issue a warrant for your arrest, they come to your house, you see the barrel of the gun. Right? It's the same step of logic that you see.
No, it's John, they don't stick a gun in your face every time they arrest you. Fuck.
They don't have to. I thought we were past this, Robert.
John, let me ask you a question. What is a threat? Is a threat considered a threat if I don't see it as a threat? Is it
Yes,
a
it's still a
threat?
threat. Yeah, it's a threat if you're yes, even if
No,
you're
it's a
dumb enough
threat
not
to
to know it's a
you.
threat, it's still a threat. Like
But
even if you don't know you're being threatened, you're still being threatened.
John, the threatened with incarceration is not violence, in my opinion.
Yes, it is because how do they bring you to the cell? How do they get you into the prison?
They take you there. I don't under. Do
Right,
they
and what if you don't
violently
want to
take
go?
you there?
What if you don't want to go?
Well, there's not a what if. Of course, you don't want to go to jail. There's
Okay, so then what? Do you just walk away, right?
so
Then they
if
don't get
I'm
to take you to jail.
if I'm governing myself in this whole situation and not like, oh well, I'm going to run because I don't want to go to jail. There's no threat of violence. They're not going to be violent to me.
Right, but you don't want to go, so you're just gonna stand there and look at each other, right? You're
No,
not running away,
if
but
you
they're not taking you to jail either because you don't want to go, and there's no violence involved.
what are you talking about? They're still going to take me if I don't want to go. It
How?
doesn't matter. I'm going to go even though I don't want to go
And how do they make sure that you go?
because I'm going to willingly go.
Oh
That's
my
the point.
god, Robert.
I don't have a choice. I've been told because I follow the law
Robert.
like it's the law. What the fuck? I mean, I understand what you're saying that
It doesn't seem
the
like it.
narrative wants everybody to be afraid of cops because it's monopoly on
I'm not
force.
talking about any
It's
kind of
not a
narrative.
monopoly on force. Everybody has the ability to use force. Everybody out there.
No, not
I mean,
legally. Not legally.
we could call a ghetto neighborhood the entire residents of that area where there's very little police protection. They have a monopoly on force.
Well, no, they don't. Not legally.
In that neighborhood, they do. It's fucking legally. What legally? Cops don't have that much legality to use force. That's why there's
Yeah, they
excessive
do.
force. That's why when they do make mistakes that are
That's
that
why
are
if you don't
actually
want to go to
followed
jail,
up
they're able
on,
to.
they go to jail.
That's why if you yeah, that's why if you don't want to go to jail, they're able to physically take you there. Is because they have the monopoly on violence. You cannot
If
do the same thing to
okay,
them.
if there was
If
a
they hit
monopoly
you,
on
you cannot
force,
hit
they
them
wouldn't
back.
be
That
going
is the
to
monopoly
jail.
on force. That is
If
how.
if they wouldn't be going to jail, they wouldn't be facing criminal charges for the shit they do. If it was truly a monopoly on force.
No, the police, like as an institution, have the monopoly on violence. Not each individual officer.
Well, you can call it the monopoly on violence or the job of enforcing law. I mean, we want to call
Yeah,
it
it's
this
all the
monopoly
same.
on violence. No, it's not this. I mean, monopoly of force is just a
How do you
negative
enforce
spin
the
to
law?
put on the job that
No,
we
it's
ask people to do because we don't want to fucking do it ourselves, and we
no, no, no,
can't.
no, Robert. It's a philosophical reality. It's not a narrative. It's not like spin. It's just a philosophical reality. You can say it's legitimate if you want, but that is
I
philosophical
would say they
reality.
have a monopoly on authority more than they have a
And how do you
monopoly on force.
enforce authority? How do you say, okay, well, this person has authority? What makes that person have authority? The threat
Law.
of violence is behind them.
Okay.
That's the
It's
only
not the
way.
rule of law. It's certainly not law.
How do you enforce a law?
What do you mean? How do you enforce the law?
How do you enforce a law? How do you make sure that if I say you're not allowed to do that and
You
you
can,
do it,
every law, lots of laws can be enforced with zero violent intent,
because
zero
the threat
violent
of
threat.
violence is
I
there.
know because we want to broad brush everything as being violent when it comes to repercussions from breaking the law. It's all about violence, right, John? It's a
No, no,
narrative. It's a monopoly of force. No matter what you do, if you break the law, there's the threat of
I'm
force
very confused how you
involved.
don't. Maybe I'm not explaining it correctly enough. I don't know because this is very. I thought we were past this. Okay.
John,
Um.
no, it's I don't need it's this idea that if we call it a monopoly of force, then we can have this business of saying that we don't need police and that the police have too much power. And the bottom line is the only reason why the police have the level of power they have is because of the authority that they're given by the authorities above them. And
Mhm.
that authority is what makes me compliant to what they say. It's not that I'm worried about their threat of violence. It's their authority and what it can do to my life.
Wait, what can it do to your life?
Well, I don't know, John. If I break the law and go to prison for 5 years, it fucks my life up.
Okay, but so again, all that authority Like what makes
So
that authority legitimate?
what's going to make you happy is if I say that yes, it's all the threat of violence. Everything that is involved with breaking the law and succumbing to the law is about
No,
the threat
it's
of violence. And if you want to
law
call
enforcement. It's
incarceration,
enforcing the law.
you want to call incarceration violence, that's fine. If that makes you
Of course
happy,
it is.
calling incarceration violence, great.
Yeah.
But if I sequester myself in a room and imprison my own self as a hermit,
Uh-huh.
that's not violent,
No,
right?
that's voluntary.
Right. And if
That's
I go to the
that's
police and turn
self-imposed.
myself in for a crime and get put in jail, is that voluntary?
Well, not entirely.
I'm sorry. If I broke the law and I go to the
Okay,
police
but the
station and I say, I broke this law,
mhm.
I need to be arrested.
Well, again, the threat of violence is still there,
No,
and
I
that
got away
what
with it.
you
Nobody was looking for me. I went and confessed.
okay, sure.
But that's what I'm saying. I
That's
mean,
fine if you want to think of
it's
that. I
not.
don't think that's true, but that's fine.
I mean, it's this idea that we want to paint the worst picture of what cops are out there doing, and the bottom line
That's not what I'm
is we
saying.
have to have them.
I'm not even saying that like having. I'm not saying. I'm not at least making that argument right now that having police is a bad thing. I'm not saying that we don't need them. I'm just saying the very simple truth that everything that police do has a threat of violence behind them. Everything, like the authority that they're given is backed up by the threat of violence. Because if you don't listen to them, if you don't listen to that authority, then they will enact violence on you until you do. That is how that works. That is, I mean, I don't understand why this is not
Yeah, and we deal with that almost everywhere we go without
okay.
police
But we could
involved. You go to a
right,
nightclub, there's bouncers there. They have
right.
right. They have a monopoly of force.
Well, no, they don't.
In that
No, they
nightclub, they
don't.
do.
No, they really can't. Like they can't hit you and stuff. They can throw you out, but
Bullshit
they
if
can't
they
hit you.
can't. They will fucking knock your ass out. Come on. You know
Maybe
what?
back in like the
You
maybe
know
back
it's
in like
true.
the 80s. No, I don't know it's true. I've never been hit by a bouncer, so I don't know. But
Trust me, people that keep an eye on bars, especially
I've
there's
been
some rough
kicked out of
fucking
nightclubs. I've
bars out
never.
there, John. There's
I'm sure, but
yeah. You've led a sheltered life too.
I have not. Oh,
Yes,
anyway,
you have.
no, I really haven't. But anyway, um, no.
But it's not
Either
the
way, no.
police that have the monopoly on violence.
No, it's the state.
The police aren't
The state
elected.
does.
Right.
But
It's government that has the monopoly on
who
violence.
enforces the government's laws?
It's got nothing
Police
to
are
do.
part of government, Robert. Police
But
are part of government.
look, we the police are an easy scapegoat for this. Yes, they are told that they have to do this job, right? They go into this job and they're told what they have to do, and they're told that they're supposed to enforce these laws.
Right, they voluntarily sign up
Right.
to enforce these laws that politicians make. Yes, I understand.
Right.
Yeah,
So the monopoly of force sits with the governments in their authority, their control, and the
that's what.
tools that they have with which to inflict that violence.
Okay.
Because police are nothing but tools in this. And the problem with
Yes.
this, the biggest problem with it these last couple of years, is that the police are getting a really fucking raw deal at the hands of a few that make mistakes or you
Sure.
know over abuse what power they do have, and it turns it's turning every cop into a bad guy.
That's not. I mean, I didn't say anything like that though. I wasn't saying that at all. All I was trying to do was go to the very simple and philosophical, point of the monopoly of violence. That's it. I'm not saying like, oh, every cop is an asshole and will just inflict violence on you, willy nilly and for nothing. I
I
wasn't saying that at all.
I would be willing to bet that if the police were a more autonomous, now I'm not necessarily going to say private, because I still think they need to be paid by the citizenry so that they can be beholding to the citizenry. But if they were actually had more authority to police themselves, to police how they police, I would be willing to bet, much like you make the argument that in a free market, these kind of this competition and all the things that would settle out in a free market and actually be a good situation. I think the same thing would happen in the police. I don't think that the police inherently, as a body, want to use force, have any desire to use force.
That's, I mean, that's not really relevant though.
It is, if from the standpoint, if they were able to set their own parameters, if they were able to do their job with some autonomy versus all the directives and all the bullshit and all the, oh, now you got to wear this weapon on one side and this on the other and learn how to make these decisions in the proper way, so and then oops, you made a mistake and grabbed your pistol, not the taser. um, you know but being beholding to these puppet masters creates a lot of strife for the police that makes
Yeah.
these situations so much worse. I mean, we're I'm honestly willing to say that this kind of thing is having a mental effect on the police,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and thus causing more of these situations to happen. Police are finding their backs up against a wall, and now we're seeing repercussions, responses to that. Where I don't know, it's really weird. It's like it's become a self-propagating scenario. That the more we focus on this, the more we badger the fucking police, the more we're going to see these incidents. Of course, right? They've got to be blown out of the water as soon as one happens. I mean, how many of them do we see constantly? And is forcing the government to have to what? Try and take more control. I mean, from the federal level, they're trying to control how police are handled at the state level and at the local level.
Well, that's what I'm going to get into about media, its ability to influence like public opinion in order to give government more control, especially federal government more control. I mean, we can see that that's what they're right. Everything they push for in mainstream media, Fox News included, before some imaginary lefty who doesn't watch us will say something. Um, yeah, their whole thing is like, oh, we need, right now we need police reform, which is why we're showing all these people being killed by police, and also we need gun reform, which is why we're showing all these people who are getting shut up. As mass shootings are happening all of a sudden. Um, I mean, yeah. So they highlight these things when they want to talk about this. The next thing supposedly is supposed to be climate awareness. It's supposed to be the next one. We'll see if that actually, it's actually the next narrative. Who knows? But yeah, like the ideas of climate lockdowns, same as the COVID ones. But so that's been thrown around a couple of times. That instead of COVID lockdowns, we start doing climate lockdowns so nature can heal, and stuff like that. So we'll see if that actually happens or not, or if that's just conjecture.
Well,
But
yeah, because that's they've redubbed it a climate emergency now,
Yeah, now it's
as
an
opposed to
emergency.
a climate concerns whatever.
It was
Now.
climate change before, and then before that it was global warming, and then before that it was global cooling. I
But
think it
now it's
was.
climate emergency.
Right, now it's an
It's been
emergency.
dubbed
But,
emergency. All the language is going to be changed to climate emergency now.
yeah.
But yeah, and so we've got media that is out there, that, and there it gets to be the problem, and it's you know not that this is a good thing, but I mean, things like this have been happening for a long time, right? We have these incidents. This is not new, right? But it's everyone's out there with a camera now. And so everybody's media now, right? Because all these videos that people are shooting and everything are getting into the hands of the mainstream media and fueling narrative, right? But yes, the federal government needs to listen to that, because if the mainstream media is reporting on things that the common citizen observer saw first, right? It's more important if a citizen gets it on camera, right?
Well, yeah, they're the only ones who really do any kind of
Right?
like actual, yeah, looking around.
Right. So
You
here
don't see a
we,
lot of like, oh, CNN got this footage. That almost never happens.
right, but it's great for the narrative, right? Because this is happening on the street. This is people on the street witnessing these things. Now we're seeing it from a firsthand perspective,
It's
and
easy to edit around, and
right,
it's easy to, and you don't usually like they don't start recording until something's already happened, or you know they miss like the 20 minutes of lead up to whatever they're about to record. It's a terrible way to look at an event
right,
because you only get that like 2.5 minute clip, like that's it,
right.
and then we have to all make a court of public opinion decision
But
right
that's
there
and that but that's the beauty of
immediately without
narrative.
more. Yeah.
It's context nuggets, right?
Hmm.
Decontextualize context nuggets, right?
Yep.
And that is enough to base policy on in the present day. That's the kicker, um, you know. And I don't see any way. There's really no way around that without shut. I mean, I hate to say it, John, but to be honest with you, the mainstream media would have to be shut down. Like it's got to be censored. It to stop this.
Um, I don't know about that. I don't know if it needs to be censored.
Well, let's look at it this way.
Wouldn't be all right with that.
I would posit that China sees a lot less rebellion in its history the more it's locked down information coming into its country,
I don't think so.
or what happens in the country, shutting down media. So there's lots of things
I
that
don't think that's true.
they actively work to shut down that go on.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But I don't know. I mean, they've got quite a bit of, unrest. It's what they don't release that we don't know. You know what I mean? We don't know everything they don't release, obviously.
And unrest is fine, but what we haven't seen, we can go back to Tiananmen Square and that kind of thing, but I mean even that,
I'm not even talking about that. But the most recent, like the Hong Kong protests,
sure, sure, but how
that
did
was
that turn out
deadly.
for
That
everybody?
was well, it turned
Right?
out
I
like
mean,
anything with the Chinese. Yeah, they're not
right.
going to win you over.
It's like
Yeah.
we're not far past status quo. Not much different than status quo, right? I mean, they're still in authority. They still have control. So they have a handle on a lot of the narrative that gets spun, right? Even going so far as to having a relatively tight control over internet, social media, what comes into the country, what's used in the country, what people have access to at any given time. And in those forms of control, even when they do have a situation like Hong Kong, it's manageable, right?
Right, right. But how about this though? I think we need to do the opposite of censorship, right? Because I think a big part of the problem that we have is that we don't get to see what wrongs mainstream media are committing, because anytime something comes out about them, it gets shut down on places like YouTube or Facebook and Twitter. Like they just get rid of those completely, and most people don't get to see them, right? Except for people who already, know about, their lies and propaganda and all that. People who already know, they'll see that stuff first. But before it gets to the mainstream, to the normie as we call them, um, they either don't get to see it, or it's taken away quickly and they kind of forget about it. And so one of the big problems is we don't get to see these retractions that mainstream media makes either, because they're on an article from a week ago and they kind of put the tiny retraction at the bottom of it saying, oh, this is actually incorrect information. They don't talk about it, right? And you're not allowed to talk about it either, right? Especially if it's something along with the lines of like the COVID stuff. You can get taken down for medical misinformation and stuff like that. Even though it'll turn out a day or so later that you're right, your stuff's still taken down. So the fact that we have censorship is what is allowing the media or the mainstream media to be so successful in proliferating their propaganda. we need is far less censorship, so that they can be called out, so that they can be shown to be liars and frauds like they are.
Well, but see, the problem there is that even with retractions, you know, we're in a day and age now. One, back in the
Yeah,
day,
that's what took down Matt's channel, is what Saint said. It's true. Matt Christensen's channel, he didn't get taken down. They were banned for a week from for streaming, and now they're on a 90-day probation for apparently medical misinformation. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what was. I don't know what was said. They don't know what was said because YouTube won't tell them what they did wrong.
right?
So, but that's the problem, isn't it? What you think? Now they're on probation. So now,
Well,
if they slip up one more time and they don't know what they did wrong, but they do it again, then they get whole channel gets deleted.
well,
I mean, it's fucked up.
yeah, and I agree that that's fucked up. But I mean, again, it's it's a private organization. They can do what the fuck they want.
Are they? No, they're not. They're not a private organization.
Does somebody does somebody own them?
Yeah, somebody owns everything.
But you
Doesn't make
John,
them a private organization.
they fought. They're gonna. They're not government. They're not a public. They're public organization. They're not public. They're not like they're they're not the postal service. They're not a nonprofit.
You can't buy Google stock.
They're a profitable corporation.
You can buy Google stock.
They're a corporation.
You can buy Google stock.
Yes, you can, because it's a corporation, John. It's a publicly traded private corporation. It's publicly traded. It's not a public entity.
I know. No, I mean they do take government subsidies, which of course makes them.
And everybody takes government subsidies in some way, shape, or form.
Yes,
you can call it whatever you want, grants,
no,
whatever.
It's
not. That doesn't make them beholding to the fucking public to give up their private business
It does, especially
rights.
with this bill coming
John,
up. Biden's going to be making
so
them
Walmart is
Walmart
Walmart
infrastructure.
So is Walmart a private organization?
Walmart is infrastructure. Yes, everything is infrastructure.
Everything, even
is
mom and
public.
pop stores.
Everything is infrastructure.
So mom and
No, I
pops
don't know
aren't
if you saw
private
that.
companies anymore.
Right, they're infrastructure. Everything is infrastructure. No, I don't know if you saw that. I think it was, who was it? Kirsten Gillibrand. Say that everything is infrastructure. They did that for a couple of days. Everything was infrastructure. But no, with this bill though, it is talking about making the internet a utility, which of course would then.
It doesn't matter if the internet's a utility.
Yes,
Private corporations are going to exist on the internet, just like they do in the real world. There's still going to be. That doesn't mean shit.
It does.
Okay,
does
so then that's telling me that a private organization on the internet that has to be beholden to the internet being a public entity like that if they have to then answer to rights, constitutional rights about censorship.
Yes.
Then that tells me that a business out in the real world is part of the overall existing public space.
They already do.
And they must conform to making a goddamn cake for a homosexual couple, even though they don't want to. Because they're out there in the public sphere as part of an open public environment. If that's what the internet is going to be and you can't be private there.
We do have anti-discrimination laws, yeah. We already regulate business. If your private companies already cannot do whatever they want. That's a bullshit argument from the start.
Well,
they can't already do whatever they want.
If you can refuse service to anyone, if you have the right to refuse service to anyone, then you can refuse service to anyone for any reason.
The problem is utilities don't. The phone company can't shut off your phone because they don't like what you said on the phone. You can't call me up and be like, dude, Verizon sucks, and then Verizon shuts your phone off. Or whatever carrier, I don't know what carrier you have, whatever it is, right? They can't just shut your phone off.
I can promise you, in your contract, isn't there, that they can terminate for any reason?
No, it's actually illegal. It's actually illegal. They can't do it. They can't just shut your phone off.
Oh, no. They don't. Your phone doesn't get shut off even when you lose service, John. Every phone still dials out to emergency services.
No, that's not.
But that's my point.
They can't deny. No. they can't stop the service just because they're a utility. They can't just stop the service. That is actually illegal. That is a thing. You can look it up. Why I don't know why you're arguing with me about it.
I'm just
And that
saying
is
that you
literally the
signed.
thing. That is the thing.
I, have you read your contract with your
Have
wireless
you?
carrier?
You've read the entire thing, and it says
No,
if you shut it
no.
off, they don't like what you say.
My point is, it's not that I've read it. It's the simple fact that I know that buried in there is all the out clauses they need. Dude, did you
Okay.
sign off on things all the time that companies have out clauses to whatever
Yeah, of
contract
course.
you're
Yeah, yeah,
signing?
of course. Yeah, yeah.
They leave
Okay.
themselves outs.
Okay.
You know they do. I'm just saying. I mean, it's it's you can't like I don't know. I can't see anybody saying that a private organization, a private company can't exist on a utility like the internet. Cable
No one's saying
services
they
do it
can't
all the
exist.
time.
Yeah, no one's saying they can't exist.
Right. So Google
But
is
that doesn't
not
mean
the
they can do whatever
internet.
they want.
Google is not the internet. They're
It
a
doesn't mean they can
company
do whatever they want.
that does stuff on the internet.
Right, but it doesn't mean they can do whatever they want because they're on a utility. They're using a
Sure,
utility.
but they can
to
censor.
bring a service.
They can censor their platform, couldn't they?
They'll probably be allowed to.
Right.
Once the internet becomes a utility, they'll probably be allowed
But
to.
the whole idea that I'm talking about with censorship is the simple fact that we live in an era of where we have completely forgotten that most of the shit you read on the internet is not true. Right? People have forgone that now. People
Well, I wonder
believe
why.
everything they read on the internet.
I don't. Well, some people do. Some
Look at it. I mean, what gets blown up in the everything, like everything gets blown up and it's just put out there, and the story may evolve to it may not even need retractions. Like for instance, how many years on the force has this cop been on the force up in Minneapolis? How many exact years?
The first one I heard was 26.
26. Heard 23, 25, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's they put out information as they're getting it these
Right,
days,
and it may
right?
or may not be correct.
So
yeah.
right,
It's pretty goddamn irresponsible.
right, and so if 60% of the readers read that first headline, that first story, that's the news they take away. They don't necessarily go on and get updates. They begin talking about the narrative based off the initial facts or whatever was thrown out first. And then they have to be corrected if they're talking to someone who actually knows more about it than they do. But their belief is in that initial first thing they read on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's happening with our headline society.
Right. There are still people who think that Nick Sandman is a total piece of shit. Like people who still believe that that initial narrative. If you remember him, the kid with the MAGA hat who like smirked at the native guy who turned out to be like a total fraud activist guy.
Right.
Yeah. And people still think he's a total piece of shit.
Right.
It's like he did nothing wrong. He did absolutely not one thing wrong.
Exactly. And
but people still believe the shit that came out the first day.
Right. I mean, look at the whole. We talk about that restaurant gate thing that happened, right? People. I mean, that
Which
was
one?
that restaurant
Yeah.
type
Which one?
of restaurant. They serve those round things that you
Oh.
cut into triangle slices.
Some of them have cheese, some of them have pepperoni
Right,
on them.
right.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
But that narrative, that initial narrative that was put out, is still held as factual belief that what was alleged going on there, it truly happened, no matter how much it was debunked, investigated, etc., etc. You can't tell them enough because they
Actually,
grab a
when,
hold of the narrative that suits them and
when it's
they
a-
run with it.
When a certain friend of mine who used to live in that area of the alleged place where that happened, when he told me that no, it's total bullshit, I believed him because he's likely to believe that sort of thing. But he said he'd been inside, like not in the basement, he said, but he'd been inside the restaurant, and he's like, no, there's no way. So I believe him when it comes to that.
Yeah, so this is what makes it so easy for the government to act
Yeah.
on these
They just act on the
situations,
initial information. They just
right?
keep pushing it over and over again. You
Right.
see this all the time. Politicians themselves pushing the same bullshit that, despite what
Right.
facts come out later, they're still pushing the same thing over and over again. They're in cahoots. That's the
Well,
problem.
I'm not. I'm not
Media
going to
and
say.
politicians,
I'm.
especially Democrat politicians, are all in cahoots.
Well, see now. See you
Not
throw
all
those things that
Democrats. Not all Democrats.
especially Democrat. They're
Well,
all in. There's no especially in fucking Washington when it comes to being in cahoots. There's no
there is though.
especially anything. The
That's not, no,
Republicans
no,
have
hang on,
been
hang on. Yeah, there's
fucking
no,
in
yeah, yeah,
cahoots
yeah. Of course, of
for
course, of course,
decades,
of course.
centuries.
They all have. No, okay, centuries.
I
They've
mean,
been
it's
around
not
for
especially
centuries.
Democrats. It's especially
It is
politicians.
especially right now. It is though. It is especially Democrats
Just
right
because
now.
they're in power, is it?
They've been in power
But
even
trust
while,
me,
even
there's a
when
lot
Trump,
of
even
every
when Trump was
Republican.
president, even when Trump was president, Democrats were the ones in power. Yes.
Anyway, everybody's in cahoots with somebody in Washington. There's no
That's
especially
true.
anybody.
Yes, I understand that,
It's
but there
the
is specialists.
effects.
Yes.
The effects of those cahoots are more what is especially present at the time
Okay, whatever.
in
Here's
Democrats.
that specificity that you always
Well, no,
bitch
I mean,
about. Like,
no. I don't. I don't love this idea where people they take these make polarizing statements like that. You can't those polarizing statements enforce the polarization in this country. You can't say especially about shit like that with one side or the other up there because they're all dirtbags. They're all
yeah, sure.
dirtbags.
And you know what? I'll tell you what. I even lately, even I've taken to kind of talking shit to Ted Cruz on Twitter. Anytime he's like, oh, this thing is a problem, and I'm like, well, what are you gonna do about it? Conservatives are useless. Like you're useless. And
Well,
I've just been digging at Ted
I mean,
Cruz for the past few days.
I'm
It's been fun.
I'm enjoying Ron DeSantis's
Yeah,
play right
he's
now.
actually getting shit
But
done.
but
Yeah,
but guess what? He's still a fucking dirtbag. And if he
maybe.
ran for president and got into Washington, guess what? He's still going to be a dirtbag
Well, I
because
mean, what do you have on him though? What is
no, no,
there
no,
on
no.
him?
He's a dirtbag because he's a fucking politician, and he's going to serve that
Probably,
purpose before he serves any other.
probably. I just haven't seen any kind of corruption from him.
It's
Not that it's not there. Not that it's
it's
not there.
it's
I'm sure there's something. He's got some dirt under his fingernails. I'm sure. But
no. It's
you
I'm
would think it would have come out during
sure.
the 2018 election,
But see, that's just
right?
it. I
Yeah,
mean,
2018.
there's the thing. It's like the initial corruption is all it takes for me to make him or any other politician a dirtbag, because
Well, what corruption has he
I
had
don't
so
ever
far?
I don't ever come across a politician who doesn't seem to be serving their job before the people.
Okay,
They're more
but
worried about their career as a politician
what's the
first.
specific thing that Ron
That
DeSantis has done?
okay, you're not hearing me.
I am, because you're saying
No,
I've never had a
listen to me.
politician
The
that
fact that
okay.
he got into politics
Uh-huh.
makes him a dirtbag because they
Okay,
serve
well,
their
that's fair.
political career before the people. Any politician who does that, and 99.9% of them do, they're dirtbags. I hate that because they'll put their career before the people. For instance, I don't love the idea that Ron DeSantis is changing his tact on marijuana, even though I like the fact that he's changing his tact on marijuana for the
Right.
benefit of what it will do for legislation. But he's not standing his ground. I believe he's changing his tact on it because it's going to help his career. And that is a level
Possible.
that is a form of corruption that makes him a dirtbag just like every other politician. That if you're going to play games with your beliefs, your values, you're there you go. You know, how harsh are your standards? What are your values if you're willing to sway those values to get a few more votes?
Right. Okay. Anyway,
Well, I mean,
regardless. Okay. Regardless, yes, Republicans are shit too. I understand.
but that's my
understand.
my point. We
But my
can't
point is
when
that
we sit here and say, oh,
look-
especially Democrats this or especially Democrats that. It's just creating more of the
Okay,
partisan bullshit.
certain politicians seem to drive the entirety of the culture and seem to also control almost the entirety of the media, and also control, not control necessarily, but are at least in, I guess, like, I don't want to say in cahoots again, but basically in cahoots with the major corporations that create law in this country, and it all seems to be going one particular
Yes,
direction.
I
But
understand that progressives
yes, the
are
other side is
very
bad too.
progressives are a bad thing right now. Any progressive agenda is becoming a bad thing, and
Mhm.
and the and you know I cannot lay it all at the feet of Democrats, because I feel like, you know, the talk has been, who was it? Mark Rubio. Was it back in 2012? Was Rubio president around 2012? Right. He was in politics, but
Yeah.
he started this narrative about how the Republican Party to needed an facelift, needed to be more present in the future, like needed to catch up, stop being the old, the old boys club that it always has been,
I mean,
and
it's not
become
wrong.
more progressive, as it were, right?
Uh,
Saying
it's
that
not just
that's
that
that's what was
progressive,
going to say. He didn't use the word progressive, no,
right?
but
So what they,
that was the intonation, is that the Republican Party needed to progress. They
what
needed to become a little more liberal and a little more future.
I'm not sure entirely. Maybe that's what he meant. Um, I think what he mainly is talking about is how, at least with conservatives, first of all, they don't tend to conserve things, right? They really don't tend to conserve anything. Secondly, they're always on their back foot, right? They're always kind of just fighting against something as opposed to being for something, which is a big problem because you can't. It's really hard to win when you're not for something. You're only fighting against something, and that's why Democrats win, or I'm sorry, that's why certain politicians win.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, no,
it's
Elephant Man's touching on something big here. The cathedral would switch to Republican talking points as soon as they start supporting permanent government. Well, they did, right? So we see this with the war in Afghanistan. And I'm not the first one to make this point. I give credit to Dave Smith. He was actually really insightful in this. How back in the early 2000s, when after 9/11, when we were supposed to be we're going into war, right? We're going to Afghanistan.